She-Ra is getting taken off of Netflix very soon. Let's go back to our roots, and let's talk about one of the juiciest dynamics in the show. Catra and Scorpia are so compelling, both because it's a train wreck you can't look away from, and because there is so much more going on under the surface. So why does this relationship fail so spectacularly? It seems simple enough. Scorpia's trying to be a good friend, and Catra's harsh and closed off. Bada bing, bada boom. So why is this video 20 minutes long? First of all, because I love to talk, and also, one is clingy and the other avoidant is technically true and the simple answer, but the reason this is so compelling is that the real answer is much more complicated and much sadder. So, what's the dynamic at a glance? Scorpia and Catra have this sad and toxic cycle. From their very first meeting, it goes something like this. Scorpia approaches too intensely, Catra recoils but tolerates. Catra then depends on Scorpia, and Scorpia adds this to her besties narrative.
"You're in charge of the fortress," she said. "Even you can't mess this up," she said. "Even me. She's thinking about me."
Catra explodes. Scorpia lets it slide with some excuse. Rinse, repeat. And especially from season 3 onwards, Catra is cruel. She belittles Scorpia, lashes out, and uses her loyalty when it's convenient.
Catra's been so busy since she got promoted, but she still always expects me to make time for her. Does she even understand how much I do for her?
And none of this is Scorpia's fault. But it also doesn't appear out of nowhere. So, why is this happening? Let's start with Scorpia, because she's the one who tries to initiate a friendship.
You all seem really good at friendship.
You're here to learn how to be a good friend?
Yes, that's it.
From the jump, Scorpia is a character motivated by friendship, by having it, and by embodying it in the best way possible. Take a look at their very first scene.
Kitty! Huh? Just so you know, I'm a hugger.
From the second she meets Catra, she's already decided the terms of their relationship and comes on strong and fast. Her first line to Catra is about who she is, what kind of things she does. Catra's input isn't really a factor. Now, all of this sounds a bit callous, but it's not malicious. Loyalty is the focal point of Scorpia's self-definition, even often to her own detriment.
I am brave, strong, give great hugs, and I'm loyal. I want to be there for her. I'm loyal. That's my whole thing.
Once Scorpia's decided that they're friends, her role is now to stick by Catra no matter what. Even when Catra is unreciprocating or outright mean.
Catra. She's mean.
She's misunderstood! You of all people should know that!
And in the name of friendship, ironically, this ends up actually being unkind not just to Scorpia herself, but to the very person she wants to care for. Because Scorpia's excuses end up downplaying the times that Catra actually manages to set firm boundaries.
What's troubling my bestie?
I'm not your bestie, and I'm fine.
Oh, I don't accept any of that.
I have no idea what you're doing, as the last thing I told you was to leave me alone.
I know. It was so noble of you. You pushed me away in order to save me, and it just brought us closer together.
I'm not... Stop badgering me! Stop hovering around me! Just back off! I don't need to explain myself to you. We're not friends!
I know. She said we're not friends anymore, but she didn't mean it.
Is Catra nice about it? Not really, no. At the same time, it's still clear. So, why does Scorpia do this? There's something almost addictively alluring about that person that's cold and unreachable. That you could fix her if you just tried a little bit harder.
Do you need to be nursed tenderly back to health?
For Scorpia, part of this is seeing Catra as a fixable project, but also holding herself specifically responsible for making that happen by just doing friendship better.
You may have left Catra, but someday she's gonna see that I won't. I'll always be there for her, because that's who I am!
The thing that she considers paramount. Which, for Scorpia, means doing more. Catra isn't responding? Be more affectionate, more enthusiastic, more complimentary. Which, of course, only repels Catra further. And to an extent, Scorpia is aware of this fact.
No matter what I do, I can't seem to break down her walls.
She recognizes Catra's walls, but not what they mean. To Scorpia, they're not a signal that she's pushing too hard or that Catra's unavailable, so her energy is better spent elsewhere. Instead, she sees the walls as a challenge, as a test of how well she can do friendship. And to a degree, we can't really blame her. Scorpia, like the rest of the Horde, hasn't really known healthy bonds. She has no model for them. The only framework she does have is the story of where she comes from.
Granddad stayed loyal to the end. That's what Scorpions do best. Brave. Loyal. Great hugs.
While Scorpia doesn't remember most of this happening, that's all she has. So she clings to that story.
I am brave, strong, loyal, and I give great hugs. And I am going to be the best friend I can be!
If Scorpia stops being loyal to Catra, then she isn't good at the one defining feature that she believes gives her worth.
Is there something wrong with us?
So, if Scorpia is ultimately well-intentioned, why is her behavior so distressing for Catra? Because, in practice, Scorpia's expectations of friendship result in her repeatedly barging through Catra's space. Emotional, but also physical.
Scorpia, remember that little talk we had about personal space?
Scorpia consistently grabs and hugs Catra, even when she's actively recoiling or explicitly states she doesn't want it.
So you know, I'm a hugger. Now just focus on me, okay? It'll help.
Put me down! What is wrong with you?
Are you okay? Do you need first aid? Do you need to be nursed tenderly back to health?
Scorpia, remember that little talk we had about personal space?
It's not just that she touches Catra without consent. It's that she actively disregards it. Again, we can argue that this isn't malicious, that it's just how Scorpia expresses affection. However, first of all, Scorpia does seem to understand the principle of consensual touch when it comes to herself.
Hey, you can't just touch another woman's tail without asking.
And second, the fact that this isn't mean doesn't make it kind. Especially towards Catra. Catra's particularly resistant to physical touch, and for good reason. For her, it's often come with pain or manipulation. Her punishments specifically involved being restrained against her will. This scene here is kind of a microcosm of their entire dynamic.
Now get out! Go!
Okay, Wildcat, I really didn't want to have to do this, but you leave me no choice.
What are you doing?
Catra's upset. Scorpia picks her up without asking.
Just let all your cares go.
Catra struggles, yells, tells Scorpia to put her down, and Scorpia ignores her and only holds her more tightly.
You're safe. You're safe here.
Stop it! Stop!
Shh. You're
Go
safe
of
here,
me!
okay?
Are you crazy?
The message Catra receives is, my behavior makes you uncomfortable. Either I'm too wrapped up in what I want to notice, or worse, I do notice, but I've decided what your discomfort means, and I don't care. I don't care enough to stop. Scorpia's choice of approach here is for Catra the loss of control she's experienced all her life. If you asked, Scorpia would say that this was out of love, but here's the thing. Pushing intimacy on your terms without regard for the other person stops being affection. It becomes violation. Ironically, the most loving act she could do, for both of them, is to leave Catra alone. And there's more to it. Catra recoils from the unwanted affection not just because it crosses boundaries, but because it's rooted in a version of Catra that isn't real. I think we can forget just how viscerally uncomfortable it can be, not just for someone to give you intense, unsolicited attention, but to do so while not seeing you, creating a story around you that simply doesn't exist. To be blunt, Catra's an ass to Scorpia. She's a mess, and she knows she's a mess. She's sullen and angry and anxious and reactive, and Scorpia showers her, to her face and in front of others, with compliments.
It's like I was telling you, she is the best friend ever.
And Scorpia's attitude also crosses into infantilization of Catra.
Do you need to be nursed tenderly back to health?
She often reframes Catra's feelings as though they're temporary.
And impress Catra so much, she'll finally admit we're best friends. What's troubling my bestie?
I'm not your bestie, and I'm fine.
Oh, I don't accept any of that.
And assumes that she knows Catra's needs better than Catra herself.
Okay, Wildcat, I really didn't want to have to do this, but you leave me no choice.
So, more than just being irritating, Scorpia's perception is at odds with how Catra knows herself to be. Catra, who's already dealing with a disconnect within herself. This highlights how unlovable she already feels, knowing that she's not really earning this affection. Because, at the end of the day, it's not about Catra. It's about what Scorpia needs.
You're everything to me.
By the way, if you wanted to see this script early, patrons got to see the script evolve and hear my detailed thoughts over there on Patreon, so if you want to support the channel, check that out. I've also talked about exclusive topics over there like Wake Up Dead Man, The Pit, Pluribus, and, coming next, Heated Rivalry. Thank you so much to all my patrons over on Patreon. Scorpia wants a fantasy best friend, and so she projects it onto Catra, even though Catra doesn't fit the part, and often outright contradicts it. Which leads us to yet another layer. Why else is this dynamic so distressing for Catra? Who was the last person to be playful or affectionate with her? It was Adora, who is now gone. Either because, in Catra's mind, Adora didn't care enough, or because Catra pushed her away. So every time Scorpia tries to rope Catra into playing best friends, this hits Catra like a tidal wave.
It's like I was telling you, she is the best friend ever.
Just keep it down. I'm going to bed.
This memory is a source of rage for her, because she can't really access the heartbreak it conceals. Not right now. Not yet. And this is also flipping Catra's worldview upside down. Because on top of this, Catra's not used to a dynamic in which she's the one with the power. Her friendship with Adora had toxic seeds planted into it from the start by design. Shadow Weaver's status quo was Adora's the favorite and Catra's her accessory. This is the power dynamic Catra grew up with and the one she grew accustomed to. But now, that's suddenly flipped. Now Catra's the one in high demand.
She left me! You ever think Adora's not as loyal as you thought?
I'm loyal, that's my whole thing.
And she straight up doesn't know what to do with herself. What's fascinating is that Scorpia actually recognizes the shadow of this past friendship.
I mean, you grew up together. I can't compete with that.
And she's right. Catra Adora is a huge pair of shoes to fill. But the response then shouldn't be to keep trying to knock down a locked and barricaded door. Blindly pursuing someone who doesn't want you around or who hurts you isn't loyalty, because caring about people doesn't mean being a perpetual yes man. Care and respect also mean allowing people to experience the consequences of their actions. And so, fittingly, Scorpia's most loving moment is when she leaves Catra for good. I love how it plays out. Simple, quiet, no fanfare. There's no speech to make about her mistreatment. She just walks away. Scorpia's freedom is realizing that there are other doors that can be opened with much less difficulty. That there are people willing and able, two things Catra never was, to connect with her. Why did Catra keep her around? Because while she treated Scorpia like a buzzing fly she couldn't get rid of, she still counted on her presence. Because Scorpia was useful, enthusiastically following orders. And for a sadder reason, because as much as Catra would have denied it, she was desperately lonely. No one's ever really treated her well, not the other cadets and certainly not her superiors. And at this moment, without any allies, there's now Scorpia, suddenly and unquestioningly devoted to her.
Unfortunately, you're the only one I can trust around here.
Sometimes the loneliness went out, sometimes the discomfort. So she pushes. Scorpia pulls. And they spin and spin. So, yes, Catra and Scorpia don't work because they have vastly different needs and ideas around friendship. Or do they? Needs at this point, yes, but here's the real ironic kicker. They don't implode because they see friendship differently. They fail because they see it too similarly. How would Scorpia define friendship? Probably like loyalty, sticking around, prioritizing someone no matter what. Who does that remind you of? Catra would probably define it the same way, which is exactly what messed her up so badly. Catra made Adora the center of her universe, and when Adora didn't do the same, that was the ultimate betrayal. For Catra, Scorpia's like a funhouse mirror, a very, very uncomfortable reflection of the very beliefs that burned her, almost taken to their extreme. Scorpia is what Catra is afraid that she looked like, loving Adora.
Oh, because I need to follow you everywhere you go?
You're Catra. You're our leader. You're my friend. You're everything to me.
And even worse, while Catra always had to hide her feelings in some way,
I told you it's not because I like you. Get off! This is not because I like you.
Scorpia's sincere and eager. But their similarity here also comes from different places. Catra was clingy with Adora, yes, but it grew out of a long, interwoven past. It was unequal and often unhealthy, but it did come from shared survival, formative experiences, and an actual mutual friendship. Scorpia, on the other hand, tries to skip to that intimacy immediately, calling her a best friend when they barely know each other as coworkers.
I'm hanging out in your room.
Unfortunately, you're the only one I can trust around here.
Because we're best friends. I need it to be something that says, thank you, but also, we are soulmates tied together by the beautiful threads of fate.
So, it's far more than Scorpia just being annoying to Catra. She is a living reminder of the part of herself that she resents the most. The part she's trying to bury.
Caring about people is what got me into this mess. Get out of here, or they'll take you down with me. Hey, thanks for getting us out of there.
Anytime. So, this is fun.
Yeah, it is.
Catra recognizes pieces of herself in Scorpia. And that's maybe the saddest bit here, that there's not nothing. Beneath the toxic mess, there's an undercurrent of something real here. A friendship that could have been, had these been regular people and not, deeply emotionally stunted child soldiers. And there are these bubbles in time where that better reality peeks through. The first is at Princess Prom. They're actually having a bit of fun together. Here, they work largely because it's still early. Catra's at the beginning of her spiral. The next big moment is during Whiteout. Catra's super unavailable for most of it, and then seems to very deliberately relent at the end.
Hey, thanks for getting us out of there.
Anytime.
This is because here, we're in a sweet spot. It's after they've known each other a bit longer, but just before the Shadow Weaver debacle that torpedoes Catra's remaining stability. And most of all, for one brief, beautiful moment, we see it in the waste. They've been away from the Horde for a couple of days, and already, things have changed. They actually connect, and Catra even acknowledges it.
We make a good team, is it?
Right. A good team. That's us.
More than that, Catra willingly gives Scorpia credit, huge for her at this juncture.
Scorpia! A toast to Scorpia!
This is the best their dynamic ever is, and it's when they're physically removed from the fright zone and everything it represents. Though, as we know, this doesn't last, and things deteriorate even more. But even later, when Catra's become her most vicious, that real connection is still under the surface. When Scorpia lies about Entrapta's recordings, Catra lies to Hordak to protect her. Then she's visibly worried when she can't find her. Because, like Catra said, they did make a good team. All of that was real. But Catra's been wounded at the heart of their similarity. That's why this can't work. So, what's the point? This isn't a simple inversion of Catra may have been cruel, but really, it was Scorpia's fault all along. Making it about blame, I think, misses the point. Both people were harmed in this dynamic, in different ways. And to be so clear, both were harmful doesn't mean equally harmful. Someone might argue that Catra's cruelty is worse than Scorpia's encroachment, and I'd be inclined to agree. The reason we discussed Scorpia's actions a bit more here is because Catra's problems are much more obvious. Her coldness, her insults, her aggression are unambiguously harmful. But Catra's harm is obviously acknowledged by the text.
I know all about how you treated her back in the Horde.
In ways that Scorpia's isn't. Scorpia's actions are often obscured by tonal framing. In the show, her actions are often played for laughs. Scorpia herself fits the trope of the big, clumsy, well-meaning oaf.
They're so slidey and slippery.
Hey! We were supposed to be loading these onto the transport.
Who could never actually be harmful. There are also bits of the disarming and cute, grumpy and sunshine trope. And on top of all of that, there's the cultural idea of positivity as inherently virtuous.
I bet there's some really nice stuff, too. Maybe Shadow Weaver will write and tell us about it.
What is wrong with you?
And wanting connection as inherently moral. All of this makes Scorpia's harm quieter and harder to discern. Though Scorpia's behavior seems selfless, it often actually wraps back around to a kind of selfishness. Scorpia insists on physical and emotional closeness, despite Catra's protests, not because it's mutual or good for Catra, but because it fits Scorpia's self-image.
I am brave, strong, loyal, and I give great hugs. I am brave, strong, give great hugs, and I'm loyal.
And none of this means that Scorpia deserved Catra's treatment. It just means dynamics take two people. The T in toxic friendship stands for two to tango. For this reason, I wish for both their sakes that we'd gotten something above a
You know I'm a hugger.
reconciliation. Even a single scene would have been nice. It's very two things are true here. Catra's behavior comes from a place of hurt, and it's still cruel. Scorpia's behavior comes from good intentions, and it can still be unkind. Friendship works when two people are seeing each other. And for all the reasons we've discussed, this was something these people could never do. They never saw each other. Catra wasn't angry at Scorpia herself. She was angry at what she represented. Scorpia didn't love Catra herself. She loved an image that she'd projected. It's only once they learn to see themselves more clearly that they can really meet for the first time.